focus on this wilderness part. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 20. Now, does everybody know, do you all know about the Exodus coming out of Egypt?
Yeah.
God sent major plagues on Egypt. God brought Israel out of Egypt and brought them into what's called the wilderness of Egypt. But in the first part of Ezekiel 20, it talks about the history. You were in Egypt, you came out, you came into the wilderness, but you rebelled against me. And I dealt with that. Sorry?
13.
Yeah, so in verse 13, the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They did not walk in my statutes, and they rejected my ordinances, by which if a man observes them, he will live. And my Sabbaths they greatly profaned. And I resolved to pour out my wrath on them in the wilderness to annihilate them, but he didn't annihilate them completely. He kept them a remnant of their children. And so the children learned to walk with God in the wilderness. The fathers died in the wilderness. The children learned to walk with God in the wilderness. And it's the wilderness of Egypt. Now let's jump to verse 33. God has brought that pattern up because he's saying what happened to you in Egypt is going to happen again. Here with Babylon, because Jeremiah is writing about the Babylon invasion, but that's also a picture of this end one here. And so it says, as I live, declares the Lord, in verse 33 of Ezekiel 20, surely with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and with wrath poured out. That's what God did in Egypt. He's going to do it again. His mighty hand and his outstretched arm speak of his power to accomplish whatever he wants to accomplish. He's going to pour out wrath. And because of that, it says, I will be king over you. So Jesus is going to become the crowned king of Israel through all of these situations. That's the good thing that's going to come out of it. And then it says, I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you from the lands where you were scattered with a mighty hand and with an outstretched arm and with wrath poured out. So they're going to end up being in all these different nations. Because when the wrath is poured out, after that wrath is poured out, God gathers them from all the nations. So the question is, how did they get there? And the answer is, and, here, and, verse 35, I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face. Jerusalem is going to be like Sodom and Egypt. God's going to bring his people, that remnant that will become faithful, that will become believing, that will become holy, that will become those who trust in Jesus as their Messiah. He will bring them out of Egypt, Jerusalem, even other cities in Jerusalem, in Israel, but Jerusalem is Egypt. He brings them out into the wilderness of the nations. That for me says it's not just Petra. They're going to go to other nations. Where? I don't know. Possibly around Jordan. I don't know. Personally, I haven't gotten that revelation yet. But I know it's more than just Petra. They're going to be looked after in the wilderness of the nations. Not in those cities. Although some will go into Babylon. Do you know how I know some of them will go into Babylon? Because when that judgment comes to Babylon, God will say to the people in Babylon, come out of her, my people. So some of them are going to go into Babylon just as they did in Jeremiah's day. When they were exiled, they went into Babylon. Daniel was one of those guys. He was in Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Some of them will be there. It's not just one thing. And that's why we can always learn more. Because it's actually a tapestry of many different threads. And we're only seeing some of those threads when we're looking at this eschatology. We're not looking at the big picture. But what we do know is what happened before will happen again. They will be exiled.
But when Babylon is it inhabited now?
Petra.
No, Babylon. There's nothing really going on.
Yeah, it depends what you would mean by Babylon. The very city that Nebuchadnezzar lived in. I don't know about that city, but what I do know is that Peter, when he wrote, he said, she who is in Babylon greets you. And Babylon, there, he's speaking about the Roman Empire. So the final Babylon, I don't actually know where it will be. Some people believe it will be in Iraq, southern Iraq, because Babylon, the woman in Zechariah, she's pictured as a woman of wickedness. And she has a temple prepared for her in the land of Shinar, which is southern Iraq. So some people say that's it's going to be literally Babylon. And some people will say that Peter wasn't even speaking about Rome, he was actually speaking about southern Iraq. But when we looked at the mystery of Babylon, we saw Babylon infected so many different nations with their gods. A lot of gods were patterned after Ishtar, goddesses. Babylon's all over the place. Even Jerusalem itself will become a small Babylon. That's why it's going to be desolated. That's why the city is going to be broken up into three and a tenth of the city is going to fall. Because God's going to restructure that city and make it holy and righteous and destroy anything of Babylon in it. So I don't know where the final Babylon will be, but Scripture tells me wherever it is, there will be some Jews in it, some of God's people in it. He will call them to come out before that fire falls. Sounds like the rapture, doesn't it? We get taken out, the fire falls. It's a pattern. It's a pattern. So look what he says here. I'll bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face, as I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So I will enter into judgment with you, declares the Lord God. I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant, and I will purge from you the rebels and those who transgress against me, and I will bring them out of the land where they sojourn, but they will not enter the land of Israel. So not everyone who goes into the wilderness goes back to the land. In the wilderness, God is going to purify a remnant that will become holy. And those that refuse to submit and refuse to be nourished by God in the way God wants, they will be cut off as well. And what will be left is the pure bride. So you're going to have, just as in the church, you're going to have a falling away from the truth. In the wilderness, you're going to have a falling away from God's chastisement and a rejection of God's chastisement, and so they will be cut off. It's all pattern. It all happens again and again. So Israel goes into the wilderness. The woman then flees into the wilderness. She's nourished for 1,260 days. But the rebels amongst her are going to perish. It's interesting, isn't it? Let's finally look at Hosea. Hosea chapter 2. What is it about the wilderness that God is teaching us? Because this wilderness is not just future. I mean, this wilderness is future, but the idea of going into a wilderness is not just something future. Even Jesus went through a wilderness. For 40 days, he was tempted by the devil. Okay? Even we go through times where it feels like a wilderness. I mean, I just remember what my brother shared the other day. You know, is it normal that God hasn't spoken to me, or convicted me, or given me this check since last Thursday? And the thing is, you know, God's speaking all the time, and it's like the Holy Spirit's just prompting him, prompting him, prompting here, prompting here. But there are times you'll go into where God seems to be silent for such a long time. That's what happened in Moses in the wilderness. Moses went up the mountain for 40 days and nothing was spoken. Complete silence. And it was in the silence God was testing his people. Are you really going to be faithful to me? No, they built a golden calf. That one will lead us out. We don't know what's happened to this Moses. God's not speaking, so let's find our own way. In the silence, in the time when God is not speaking, that wilderness, God is testing. What was Jesus experiencing in the wilderness? Testing. If you're the Son of God, make these stones into bread. If you're the Son of God, he's being tested. So we also get tested in our wilderness, and Israel will be tested in her future wilderness. But she will come out of it pure. She will come out of it holy and righteous and a delight to God's eyes. So let's look at Hosea chapter 2. Hosea chapter 2 verse 14. Okay. Again, the verses previous to these verses speak about Israel's idolatry. Always. It's always the case throughout the prophets that you're going to go into this because of idolatry. In this case, the Baals. Verse 14 says, "Therefore, behold, I will allure her, bring her into the wilderness, and speak kindly to her." Let's break that down. Therefore, because she has these lovers and these other gods, therefore, I will allure her. That word allure means to woo or persuade, as if you're trying to persuade a girl to marry you. Now that sounds very kind of selfish, doesn't it? You know, you're going up to a girl and you're trying to persuade her really because you want her. But if you read it on the back of what God's already said about Israel, there's nothing lovely about Israel that would ever provoke God to try and allure her or woo her. So really, it's not about God. God's not doing it because for like, you know, wow, she's so wonderful, I want her and no one else can have her. It's because of his love for her, despite her wickedness and her apostasy and her filthiness. He's still going to pursue her. And then it's real love. It's not a selfish love. It's this pure love that is faithful to the promises he made to their forefathers. He will bring her, literally make her walk in the wilderness. So God is going to lead Israel in this wilderness. The wilderness is a place where you don't know where the next stop is, but you just know God's moving you to that next place. That's the wilderness. It says, woe to those who build their own fires. Walk in the light of your own fires, perish. The light that God gives here is a light that just shows you your own feet, and then you don't know much else. You can't see 5 inches in front of your face. That's the wilderness, clear as fog. But you know God's now moving you to the next point, and you just got to follow him to that next point. That's the wilderness. It's like nothing's clear. Israel didn't know, they didn't have a roadmap. When they went through the wilderness, there was no map. They only had the cloud and the fire that came up, and it was, okay, time to move on now. That's it. They didn't have anything else. What were they learning to do? They were learning to walk by faith, not by sight, and to trust in their God. That's what, if they wanted that golden calf, you lead us, because then we can have some form of control over our lives. Here, there's no control over our own life. God has complete control. And so, I know some of you are thinking, yes, I've been through that. I've been through that. Look what it says. I will speak kindly to her. Literally, I will speak on her heart, or over her heart. God is speaking to Israel's heart in the wilderness. He's not giving them all the answers. He doesn't give all the answers, but he speaks to their heart. And then it says, then, after this time in the wilderness, I will give her vineyards from there. Look at that. So if she goes through this wilderness and perseveres, from the wilderness God gives the vineyards. So when Jesus comes back in Armageddon, after that, they get it automatically. It's yours now. You know, they don't even have to go into the land to get those vineyards back. Jesus is going to get it for them. Okay, it's all yours. Go and take it. Enemies dealt with. They're massacred. Now it's yours. Walk in. So look at what it says here. And the valley of Achor as a door of hope. Valley of Achor means valley of trouble. There's going to be severe trouble. But that trouble, God will turn it to become a door of hope. What's very interesting is when Israel went into the land, the first port of call was to get to Jericho. Okay, and in Jericho, they made a friend who was a prostitute called Rahab. And Rahab repented because she saw the God of Israel was the true God. And so she says, I will help you if you keep my family alive. And so they said, do this. Put a cord of scarlet thread outside your window. Literally, put out a hope of scarlet thread. It's the same word, hope. Tikvah. The cord is hope. Jesus' blood is our hope. So here, what is trouble is turned to hope. And no matter what happens to the rest, they gain their lives. And we'll look at that just in a moment. They will gain their lives. The Valley of Hor is also the place in Joshua chapter 7 when they were campaigning and they were fighting against the enemy. They were supposed to annihilate everything, not take anything. Everything had to be given up to God as a whole burnt offering. But Achan saw some of the, I think it was the gold, and he stole it and he put it in his tent, and it wasn't given up to God. He took it for himself. And so God caused Israel to be defeated by their enemies. And Joshua's wondering what? And God's saying, you've taken something that doesn't belong to you. It's under the ban. It's to be annihilated, but you've taken it. And they found out the person that took it was Achan. That was near the Valley of Achor. The rebel had to be dealt with so that the people could go in the land. In the wilderness, the rebels are dealt with so that those who are become the pure remnant get to go back into the land. Does that make sense? It's these concepts that are coming through. The Valley of Achor, the trouble, what is trouble and these rebels getting dealt with, ends up becoming their glory and their hope and their salvation. Because Jesus comes back in the end and deals with the enemies. And look what it says. It will come about, I will give her the Valley of Achor as a door of a hope. And she will sing there as in the days of her youth, as in the day when she came up from the land of Egypt. And I believe when she comes out of Israel into the wilderness and then is on her way back, I believe people of Israel, as they go to the land, and the Bible says the nations, the kings of the nations that are surviving, going to bring Israel back to their land with their possessions. And I believe they're going to sing Psalm 117. And what does Psalm 117 say? Praise the Lord, all you nations. Laud him, all you peoples. For God's loving kindness, his loyal love, is great to us. And his mercy and his truth to all generations. I think that I've quoted that right. But it's like, you nations celebrate because of God's faithfulness to us. I believe they're going to be singing that when they go back to the land, accompanied by the nations. That's just my belief. But here, it is exciting. Yeah. Because God is going to make it up so much to Israel. And so it says here, it will come about in that day, declares the Lord, that you will call me Ishi, and you will no longer call me Ba'ali. That makes no sense in English, but Ba'ali means my husband, means my owner. They use that term to speak of God. Ba'ali, you are my husband, you're my owner. It's like almost like you bought me, I belong to you. There was one problem. It wasn't just God who was called Baal. There were other gods called Baal. Baal Zephon, Baal Zebub, Baal, the thunder god. And so they confused those gods with the true God. A bit like Christians going into Muslim countries and they call God Allah. Allah means God. It does mean God. But it gets confused. So God will say to those people, no longer will you call me Allah. You'll call me something else. Because I'm not going to be confused with any other God. You won't call me my husband anymore. You'll call me Ishi, which means my man. And that's amazing because Ba'ali means my husband is someone who owns me. Ishi means my man, as in someone who's almost like equal to me in an intimate relationship between two equal parties. We're not equal to God, but that's how God will relate to his people in tenderness. and come and relate to me and speak to me. I mean, you call me Ishi, because I will remove the names of the Baals from my mouth, so that they will be mentioned by their names no more. In that day I will also make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky, and the creeping things of the ground. That's creation. So creation is going to be restored. The chaos is going to give way to order again. It's going to be like a new creation. Hallelujah. And I will abolish the bow, the sword, and war from the land. No more fighting. I will make them lie down in safety. And look at verse 19. I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in loving kindness and in compassion. And I will betroth you to me in faithfulness. Then you will know Jehovah, Yahweh, the Lord, the same name that God revealed to Moses. His covenant name. Israel are going to be married. Israel comes into this wilderness to be nourished by God, just like God sent the manna. So God's going to nourish them in the wilderness. He's going to deal with the rebels, cut them away. He's bringing them to a place where they rely on Him alone and not in their lovers, because their lovers have turned against them. And then all those idols are forsaken. And it's only through spending that time being led by God, they get brought to that place where, with Armageddon, they're going to call out on Jesus as their Messiah. And Jesus will come and save them. And then they will be in that marriage relationship with God. Out of all of that, it's going to be awful, but God will give beauty for ashes, the garment of praise instead of the garb of mourning. And God is going to turn it all upside down. So what we're going to look at next, I don't want to go through every single thing, especially here. There's a big question of, you've got like the seventh seal judgment here. So you've got these different seals. Antichrist comes in time of tranquility and peace, and it goes to war. Then there's famine, death by pestilence, martyrs, that's the Great Tribulation. And then the sixth seal is the sun going dark, the moon turning to blood. And that's when the day of the Lord starts. And that's when the rapture happens. The 144,000, which we will look at as well, will be sealed. And then Israel go into the wilderness for 1,260 days. Then that seventh seal judgment brings 7 trumpets of judgment. A third of the earth is burned, a third of the sea becomes blood, a third of the river is poisoned, a third of the light goes dark, and then there's a locust army that torment people, and then there's Joel's army, which makes the land desolate. That's trumpet number 6. Then trumpet number 7 is the declaration that Christ is reigning. The kings of the earth have become the kings of our Christ and of his God. It's almost like when they took down the walls of Jericho, and they blew the trumpets, and they walked around 7 times on the 7th day, and the walls came tumbling down, and it's like, this is the end of your kingdom now. That's a message to Antichrist. And then we have 7 bowl judgments. Now the 7th seal judgment, when the 7th seal is broken, there's 7 trumpets. But when the 7th trumpet is blown, we don't see the 7 bowls. I personally don't know when those 7 bowls come in. Some people place them after the 7th trumpet. Some people place them within these trumpets. I don't know. But this is when the wrath of God is completed. It's really filled. But all of it culminates in this Armageddon campaign. So that's something you will have to study yourself, because I'm still studying this. But we're going to look at Armageddon, because that's a very clear thing regarding Israel and their journey. And then after looking at Armageddon, we'll look at who these 144,000 are. We might look at 1 or 2 other things, but then we'll go on to looking at the millennium after that, because that's the blessing, yeah. And we'll look at how the millennium then prepares everybody for the New Jerusalem and eternity with God.